Her loved ones are keeping her name alive.
She was my world, my best friend.
It's still like a shocking to me, you know what I'm saying? Because I'm still like I'm in a dream.
Good evening, I'm Robert Townsend. Tonight, a man is in jail after being charged in a deadly domestic disturbance in Afton. He's accused of killing a woman police say he was dating. New tonight, 5 on Your Side's Annie Kroll spoke with the victim's family about the legacy they know she's already leaving behind.
It's still like a shocking to me, you know what I'm saying? Because I'm still like I'm in a dream.
The new reality for Calvinita Brock after losing her youngest daughter, Kelsey Elem. St. Louis County Police say just after 11 p.m. on Thursday, a fight between 21-year-old Martino Lewis and a woman he was in a romantic relationship with broke out in the 5800 block of Grace Avenue. Charging documents say an eyewitness overheard an argument on Thursday night, but it was Kelsey's family who says that escalated into the man they call Tino punching Kelsey so badly in the mouth she started bleeding.
They always been arguing for some reason. I always stayed into it because my baby was she's a legend, she was trying to do her thing, but this was one that she was always supporting, taking care of, helping. This a dude that she was doing all this stuff for, and this is what you did?
Right. Documents say Kelsey was afraid Lewis was going to get her gun and asked a witness to call police. While he was on with 911, he heard a gunshot and saw Lewis run out of the house to drive away in Kelsey's car. Less than 48 hours later, Brock, who said the two were close friends, had to clean out the home her daughter was killed in.
All that blood and brains and whatever that's in her room, that was wow. That was nothing about drop on the floor.
No.
Nothing.
Zoria Moten emphasizing how amazing her older sister was.
She can light up the room. She very playful. She funny. She outspoken. I can describe Kelsey in so many ways. She was just a lot. She was my world, my best friend.
The April air in St. Louis hung heavy that Thursday evening, a quiet spring night that promised rain. Inside a modest home on Grace Avenue, 25-year-old Kelsey Elem was winding down from an ordinary day. Friends described her as radiant that week. She had just posted online about finally feeling at peace in her skin, proud of the woman she'd become after years of struggle and transformation. But behind her bright smile, Kelsey's relationship with Martino Lewis, her 21-year-old boyfriend, had grown tense. Neighbors often heard arguments rising from the house, bursts of shouting that quickly faded into uneasy silence. To most, it looked like a young couple figuring things out. To those closer, it felt like something darker brewing. That night, the arguing escalated. A witness later told police that Kelsey's voice cracked with fear. She begged for someone to call 911, afraid, she said, that Martino might grab her gun. Minutes later, a single shot broke the stillness. When officers arrived, Kelsey lay motionless on the floor, her dreams and laughter silenced in an instant. Martino was gone. He had fled in Kelsey's car, later spinning a story that they'd been attacked while driving. But the evidence, the blood, the bullet casing, the desperate 911 call, painted a different picture. As news spread across St. Louis and social media, grief rippled through the LGBTQ+ community. Kelsey wasn't just another name, she was a friend, a daughter, a woman who had finally found her place in the world. And now, she had become another victim of intimate partner violence, her story joining a tragic list far too long. This is where her story begins, not with her death, but with the life she built, and the truth that demanded to be told. By the time police tracked Martino Lewis down, the clock had already passed midnight. He was found several miles away, sitting in Kelsey's car outside a friend's house, his hands trembling, his clothes stained. When questioned, Martino told detectives a story that didn't add up, that he and Kelsey had been driving when someone shot at them from another vehicle. It was a shaky tale, stitched together in panic. Investigators at the scene of the shooting, however, already suspected otherwise. The blood spatter, the spent casing, and the single-entry wound all pointed to something that happened inside the home, not on the road. Neighbors confirmed hearing an argument, a woman crying for help, and then a gunshot. The 911 call placed by a frightened witness sealed the timeline. Martino's story began to collapse under scrutiny. Within hours, detectives found the weapon, discarded and wiped clean, in the hands of a friend who said Martino had begged him to get rid of it. When confronted with this evidence, Martino lowered his head and muttered, "It was an accident." But to prosecutors, the bruises on Kelsey's face and the fear in her last words told a different story, one of control, rage, and a tragic end to love gone wrong. On April 25, the St. Louis County prosecuting attorney charged Martino Lewis with second-degree murder, armed criminal action, and domestic assault. His bond was set at $400,000 cash only. The headlines called it another domestic dispute. But to Kelsey's friends, it was much more. It was the loss of a woman who had survived everything except the one person she trusted most. As police led Martino away in handcuffs, the city began to ask the question that echoes through every tragedy like this: why didn't someone stop it sooner? Before her name appeared in headlines, Kelsey Elem was simply Kelsey, a bright, driven young woman with a quick laugh and a heart that seemed to stretch wide enough for everyone she met. Born in Atlanta, she grew up with a spirit that refused to be small. Friends remembered her as the one who could walk into a room full of strangers and leave with new friends before she walked out again. After finishing high school in East St. Louis, Kelsey pursued college courses and vocational training, hoping to become a medical assistant. She wanted a career where she could help people heal, something she understood deeply, having had to heal herself time and again. Life hadn't been easy. Transitioning as a black transgender woman came with rejection, danger, and the daily challenge of being seen for who she truly was. But she refused to let that define her pain. In her final social media post, made just a day before her death, Kelsey shared a photo of herself smiling in the sunlight, captioned, "I'm finally proud of the woman I see in the mirror." It was raw, triumphant, the kind of message that inspired others in her community to keep going. Her friends say she dreamed of one day opening a beauty and wellness studio, a place where trans women could feel safe, seen, and celebrated. She wanted to give others what she fought so hard to find, one friend recalled. Peace. Confidence. Love. When news of her death broke, the LGBTQ+ community in St. Louis gathered in vigils, holding candles that flickered like her spirit, fragile yet defiant. Activists spoke her name at rallies, refusing to let her story fade into the long, heartbreaking list of transgender women lost to violence in America. For them, Kelsey's story wasn't just another tragedy, it was a rallying cry. A reminder that trans lives, especially black trans women's lives, remain at risk even in their own homes. As the court prepared for trial, those who loved her held on to one truth: before she was a victim, she was a survivor. And though her life was stolen too soon, Kelsey Elem's voice, her laughter, her courage, her truth, would not be silenced again. The courtroom was quiet when Martino Lewis entered in handcuffs, his eyes fixed on the floor. Family members of Kelsey Elem sat just a few feet away, clutching tissues and photographs of her smiling face. The air carried the kind of tension that only grief and anger can share. For them, this wasn't just another case. It was the fight to make Kelsey's life matter beyond the tragedy that ended it. Prosecutors laid out the evidence methodically, the argument neighbors overheard, the witnesses' frantic 911 call, the gunshot, and the discarded weapon found hours later. Each piece of proof formed a timeline that prosecutors said showed intent, a moment of rage that turned deadly. They described Kelsey as a woman trying to escape a pattern of control and fear, silence before she could find safety. The defense painted a different picture, an argument that spiraled out of control, a split second of panic rather than murder. They asked the jury to see it as an accident. But for Kelsey's loved ones, the word accident felt like another wound. Outside the courthouse, activists gathered with signs that read, "Justice for Kelsey," and "Protect Trans Lives." Candles burned on the courthouse steps, the same way they had during the vigil weeks before. For every person holding a flame, Kelsey's story had become something larger, a symbol of the violence so many transgender women face and the justice they rarely receive. As the trial continued, the community watched, waiting for a verdict that could never truly restore what was lost. Whether the sentence would bring peace or only more pain remained uncertain, but one thing was clear: Kelsey's story had lit a fire that no verdict could extinguish. Months after the night on Grace Avenue, the trial came to an end. The jury deliberated for hours before returning with their verdict: guilty of second-degree murder. As the words were read aloud, a hush fell over the courtroom. Kelsey's mother wept quietly, clutching her daughter's photo to her chest. It wasn't justice in full, nothing could ever bring Kelsey back, but it was a measure of accountability in a world that too often denies it. Martino Lewis was sentenced to decades in prison, his expression unreadable as he was led away. Outside, the sky had begun to clear after a morning rain, sunlight breaking through the gray. Some said it felt like Kelsey's spirit was there, calm, radiant, free at last. In the weeks that followed, her story spread far beyond St. Louis. Advocates for transgender rights shared her name at marches, vigils, and panels about intimate partner violence. News outlets told her story not as a statistic but as a life, a woman who dreamed, loved, and fought to exist authentically. At a memorial held near the home where she once lived, friends placed candles and roses around a framed photo of Kelsey smiling in her favorite lavender dress. They spoke about her laughter, her determination, and the joy she brought to others. She was light, one friend said softly. Even after everything, she still believed love could heal. And though her life was stolen far too soon, Kelsey Elem's name continues to echo, a reminder of resilience, love, and the urgent need to protect those too often unseen. Her story became more than tragedy, it became a call to action, ensuring that her voice, at last, would never fade. Time has passed, but in St. Louis, the name Kelsey Elem still lingers, spoken softly at vigils, written on protest signs, whispered among those who knew her as more than a victim. Her story became a catalyst, igniting conversations about love, identity, and the hidden dangers faced by transgender women behind closed doors. Local organizations began hosting workshops on domestic violence prevention and trans-inclusive crisis response, using Kelsey's story as a starting point for change. Survivors came forward, sharing their experiences of silence and fear, finding courage in the memory of a woman who had once been afraid too. Each year, on the anniversary of her death, friends and advocates gather on Grace Avenue. They light candles along the sidewalk, turning the quiet street into a river of flickering gold. Someone always plays her favorite R&B songs, and for a few hours, grief feels like love wearing a softer face. Children from the neighborhood run between the candles, their laughter mingling with the hum of remembrance. Kelsey's mother now speaks at schools and community centers, reminding people that violence begins long before the first blow, in neglect, in prejudice, in silence. If you hear someone crying for help, she says, don't wait for the sirens. Be the one who answers. Through her, Kelsey's spirit continues to reach people she never met, her story reshaping how others see trans lives, not as tragedies, but as human, as sacred, as worth protecting. Though the world moves on, those who loved her carry her light forward. And in that glow, in every act of kindness, every name remembered, every life saved, Kelsey Elem lives on, not as a shadow of what was lost, but as a beacon for what still can be.